Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining the fourth in our series of 6 summer sessions. Today, we're going to have a conversation about BranchCache. BranchCache is an integrated feature of Server 2008, 8R2, 12, 12R2. So congratulations, you own it. The primary goal of today's seminar is to just introduce you a little bit to the BranchCache, talk about how it can be used both within your private network as well as be expanded or extended out into the quote-unquote public cloud or hybrid cloud environment. We will talk a little bit about what BranchCache can do. We'll talk a little bit about the security. And finally, we'll talk about a couple of clients that we've got it operating in today in a production environment. So without further ado, the agenda today, and I touched on this a little bit, I would like to take a minute to talk a little bit about Champion Solutions Group. We are a 35-year-old firm headquartered in Boca Raton, Florida. We have 22 locations in 11 states up and down the East Coast. I'm not going to read the slide to you, I promise. Long story short is about 5 years ago, our CEO, Chris Pyle, decided to move Champion Solutions Group towards becoming a cloud solutions provider. At the point, we were using Lotus Notes, Siebel, CRM, and everything was on-premise, full DR up into our Atlanta location, etc. Today, we have moved ourselves from Siebel to Dynamic CRM. We've moved ourselves from Lotus Notes to originally BPOS and now Office 365. And over the last couple of years, we've helped several thousand clients move over 2 million mailboxes to Office 365. And between ourselves and MessageOps, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Champion, we currently are partner of record for north of 1.4 million Office 365 subscriptions. So that's a little bit about Champion. Okay. So now I'm going to move ahead. I always have to have a little commercial, so I hope you guys don't mind. My bosses get mad if I don't do at least some commercialing. We look at, and this is a slide that we've actually kept throughout all, and this is the fourth time we've used it, because whether we're looking at centralized authentication, which was one of our previous ones using the Enterprise Mobility Suite from Microsoft, or Active Directory, Azure Active Directory, or whatever, the same goal, the same business requirement is coming to light with these solutions. We're looking to deliver anywhere access to any data at any time, and oh, by the way, make sure it's secure and make sure it'll support my Dingleberry and whatever other device that I want to be able to work from. So it's a heck of a challenge for IT professionals. And Microsoft is going and doing a good job of giving us ways to get there. So the problem as we see it, okay, is pretty simple. Our organizations grow, our needs to access data, applications, etc., are changing on a daily or weekly or monthly basis. The numbers of locations we have. You never knew that Dunkin' Donuts was going to be an office on your network, did you? You never knew you were going to have to make sure you had secure connectivity from Starbucks. There, I did Dunkin' and I did Starbucks, so I couldn't upset anybody. Point is that when you start looking at all of these remote locations, all of these different applications, all of these different software as a service applications, it becomes difficult to maintain and control who's doing what, when, where, and make sure that the intellectual property of your organization, as well as business in general, is being protected. And to do that is expensive. So what we're looking to do and what we're trying to get across with the BranchCache environment is centralized access to data, authentication, authorization, and accountability of who's accessing data, applications, etc., when. Okay, are they supposed to be doing that? Monitoring for anomalous, great word, anomalous activity monitoring for people coming in from Timbuktu or whatever, and being able to make sure that the users have the access to their data, being able to support the multiple different platforms, being able to support shared applications, Citrix, RDS, whatever, and being able to support the more popular operating systems, Windows 7, Windows 8, Macintosh, etc. Okay? And finally, making sure that the data is secure, making sure that the version or that the files are being managed appropriately, with the biggest challenge being, let's make sure that our users can actually do their job, that they can see the benefit in making data available to them securely through the cloud, because if their requirement is to log in with their email address or the UPN and their password, if you want to add a additional factor of authentication, whether that's a one-time use code on a text message, whether their cell phone is going to ring and they have to hit the pound key or something else, to physical or even virtual or soft tokens installed on local drives. Okay? What we need to do is we need to make sure the data is secure. We need to make sure that the user experience is good. And BranchCache goes a long way towards making the WAC shares, the F drives, the Z drives, whatever that our users are used to, being made available no matter where they are. So that is BranchCache, and that is its deliverable. Okay? Now, there are two versions of BranchCache. Okay? And the word branch is very important because it's designed at remote offices. You have your central headquarters. There are two types of BranchCache. There's distributed and there's hosted. The difference is pretty straightforward. Distributed is specifically designed for the smaller branch offices. Let's say, and there's no hard, fast rule, but anywhere from 25, 30, 40 devices or under. Okay? Distributed cache uses the resources of those locally attached domain-joined devices as cache points. So if I open a Word document, an Excel document, or whatever document through an F drive or a G drive, in distributed cache, it opens it through the use of hashing, through the use of the intelligence of BranchCache. It's actually looking at those other devices through a centralized database, of course, but it's literally looking for that file or files that have been downloaded or opened previously. It would then pull the pieces that are current from that local and bring down any changes from the central file share. And again, whether that's on your premise or elsewhere, doesn't really matter. Hosted cache is a little different. It's typically used for the larger branch offices, 25, 30, 40 seats or above. It's typically used to be able to support backwards compatibility for Windows XP or other. Okay? And finally, it provides local file share services, okay, and the ability for you to say, okay, I want to make sure that the last 90 days of all data for share X, Y, and Z is locally cached on that server. I'm just making up a timeline, etc. But it allows you to increase the amount of data that's being held out in the remote locations, number one. Number two, because of BranchCache's capabilities, it offers you versioning. So as I open a file on server XYZ in Office in Terrytown or whatever, I'm able to make changes, etc. Save it. It replicates back to the central. Okay? BranchCache is smart enough to understand which version of those documents. It's smart enough to come up and tell you as an administrator, hey, we've got document one that has been changed by Jim and Joe. We need to make a decision as what's going on. Okay? These are the types of capabilities that BranchCache is providing. So as we go forward, okay, learn a little bit about how it does what I just said. It's not magic. It utilizes hashing capabilities and algorithms that are built into the BranchCache application. Again, I'm repeating myself a little bit. It utilizes the current authentication and authorization model that you're using in Windows Active Directory. Okay? It enhances it and enables it to look across slow links and to deliver data to there as efficiently and as effectively as possible. So for example, I open a 1 megabyte Excel spreadsheet across the wide area network, and it takes 5 seconds to pull it, or whatever it takes. Okay, I do my thing, I save it, bang. Okay, the next time I open it, it opens as if it was sitting on my local C drive. Okay, Jane, who sits next to me, opens the same Excel spreadsheet from that WAC share, that if she was in our headquarters or wherever, it looks the same, feels the same, touches the same, tastes the same. She would double click on that Excel, but instead of pulling it across the WAN, because it's the first time she's looked at it, it's either, if I'm in distributed cache, it's going to be pulling the data from my local drive or from my local cache, or if I'm in hosted where I have a local server, it's going to be pulling the bulk or the brunt of the data from there. So everything is done, everything is encrypted end-to-end, etc. You can manage the keys, of course, and that can be applied both to premise within your environment as well as when you extend it out perhaps into the public cloud environment. So now, this is just a pretty cool slide, I think, that shows and tries to demonstrate what we're talking about from a remote access optimization perspective. So I've got my headquarters, I've got my branch offices, and we've got our cloud, whether that's, again, Microsoft Azure, whether that's Amazon, whether that's VMware, VCHS, whatever, okay? Through the use of another acronym, because we didn't have enough, Unified Remote Access. URA is the Microsoft's new go-forward direction. It's been around for a couple of years. I mean, I'm not telling you anything you may not have heard before, but bottom line is when you take Unified Remote Access in conjunction with BranchCache, okay, and you can even go to the next levels, multi-factor authentication. You can use direct access, which is a, for lack of a better word, a stateless VPN that's available from Microsoft. It does require IPv6, which adds a couple of additional challenges, but it is what Microsoft has rolled out for their 250,000 employees or whatever. It's a very cool go forward. We are still a little bit, I think, immature on the IPv6, but that's an opinion. But when you look at this environment, okay, and I'm going to step back and have the slide redraw itself, okay, we have our connections. We're doing sending and receiving of data. Through the advantages of the branch cache, what it's doing is removing 50%, could be 75%, could be 99% of the actual payload and pulling it from local resources, which would improve throughput, which would make your end users much happier because at the end of the day, we've all invested, whether it's in a local device, a local server, multiple local servers, local WAN accelerators, possibly WAN accelerators with VMs in them. We've all spent or looked at these different solutions from Riverbed, Cisco, God knows who else, to figure out how to minimize the amount of data that we're sending over the slow link. Well, BranchCache has gone a long way towards helping you get there without having to go out and invest thousands of dollars in that WAN accelerator. Not that there isn't a great value in WAN acceleration, especially when you're looking at quality of service for voice, etc., but this can help reduce, and we all know that Microsoft traffic is never chatty, this can help reduce the amount of payload that gets to be moved and take advantage of the higher end functions of Windows Server 8 and 12. So that's my soapbox for the day. A couple of values or a couple of highlights, for lack of a better word. That's what Microsoft called them in this stolen slide, I admit it. From a management perspective, from a security perspective, from a client support perspective, okay? Again, I don't read slides to people But I look at this and I go, all right, I want to do anywhere access anytime without having to retrain my users how to, okay, you got to do this and you got to stand on your head on a Tuesday. Okay. What I'm looking to do is to centrally administer and deliver this level of security, this level of access based on global policy. I don't want to care if my users are in a Dunkin' Donuts or a Starbucks or my office in Buffalo, New York. Okay. I want to be able to support the standard routing protocols that we're good at. Okay. I want to be able to manage and deliver a better experience than my users are getting now. And this enables you to take advantage of the infrastructure you own, to enhance the infrastructure you've owned, possibly consolidate it, okay, because you don't need terabytes of storage at each of your remote locations anymore. I'm being facetious, but you understand my point, okay? And finally, give you the ability to monitor this, take advantage of any management tools that you have, whether it's System Center for the 42% of Fortune 500 who've invested in it, or third-party tools that you may be using to let you know what's going on. But built into these new solutions is learning. It understands when things are or transactions are occurring from unique places and can tell you about them. So that's important. Okay. Unlimited. Yeah, sure. The word unlimited I don't like, but pretty unlimited growth. So as the organization grows, as the number of remote locations grows, okay, as your need to deliver services grows, you have an infrastructure, whether it's on your premise or in the cloud, okay, where you can begin delivering applications, whether those are standard client server, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, PDF, whatever, or SaaS applications, or in-house delivered web-based applications. You have the ability to now begin publishing them into, again, the Microsoft Azure environment through what's called Remote App. There's other tools out there that we can do it, but the good news is in the Azure environment. They're not the only one who does it, so don't take me wrong, but I'm here with Microsoft, so I'm going to talk about them. We have the ability to do one or multiple MPLS drops such that we take that infrastructure, that Azure infrastructure, and we make it on net for you for business continuity, file sharing, backup, etc. So bottom line is that your network is critically important. And if I can take all of my remote access points and point them somewhere else and only have to worry about one connection, and that connection is primarily over an MPLS, which is about as secure as it can get, knock on wood, it gives me the ability to focus my security, to focus my penetration from the public, for lack of a better word, in one general area. Obviously, I still got to put locks on the doors, and I still have to look out for social, but it's reducing the points of entry into the environment. Is there a dollar value associated with that? Sure. What is that dollar value? I don't know. That's something that you would have to determine. So I've talked a little bit to this. Excuse me. BranchCache, BranchCache is smart enough, and it takes advantage of DNS, takes advantage of Active Directory, it takes advantage of another acronym, an SCP, okay, Service Connection Point. These are packets. These are...
For more than 30 years, Champion Solutions Group has been helping clients reduce costs, increase productivity, and improve application availability.
Excuse me, we'll be back. Okay, sorry about that. Somebody in my office put the phone on hold. I apologize. Through the use of the SCP, okay, this allows centralized management, administration, delivery of the policies, again, via GPO. It allows us to simplify and secure the endpoints. So now what I wanted to do was talk about a couple of example accounts because I consider this to be where the rubber hits the road. couple of months ago, we had a client of ours who's been a client of ours for years. We moved them 4 years ago or so into BPOS, which is a predecessor to Office 365. It was fun, it was great, it was neat. They have since moved from Office or BPOS to Office 365 Wave 14 and now Wave 15. They came to us and said, look, here's our challenge. We've got 1,500 employees. These are buyers. These are salespeople. These are whatever. And they are everywhere in the world. They're a textile company. They buy a boatload of material, etc., from China, from other places in the world, and have very limited access, sometimes no access. And they want to be able to do it with an iPad or God knows what else. Okay. So initially, we talked about doing BranchCache, relying upon VPN connectivity, and in the case of the non-Microsoft devices, providing RDS access to applications so they would be able to get access to the data. Each of them have Office installed on the different platforms, etc. Then we talked about, and we got that implemented. It's in play. We've extended AD into Azure. It's working very well. Next thing that was asked of us was, look, we have a boatload of data and boatload of unstructured data. We did a storage assessment across there on 18 or 19 terabytes of storage. Please excuse me, I don't remember exactly. But surprisingly enough, 70% of their data hadn't been touched in north of 365 days. And of that, 60% of that number hadn't been touched in more than 2 years. So we recommended the implementation of ILM, or Information Lifecycle Management, where we actually take advantage of metadata and move data from whatever SAN you have on premise, and we move it from storage repository to storage repository with the goal of moving everything into Azure, where the storage costs are ridiculously low, without changing the user's experience. So if I go to my F drive and I double-click on a file that happens to have been moved, it may take a little bit longer to recall it from the Azure storage, but typical end user's probably not going to really see a difference. Okay. Now, additionally, in their case, we were looking for a disaster recovery mechanism to make sure this data is always available to them and to reduce the speed at which files can be downloaded to people in China. So what we ended up doing in their case is implementing DFS on their local premise, replicating, and this is something that we've only started in the last 60 days, 45 days, something like that, where we're actually DFSing, replicating specific drives up into the Azure environment. And the way we have the Azure storage replicating, it's being made available to the users wherever they are in the world. So it's increasing the throughput, and it's offloading that VPN connectivity. We're offloading it totally to the Azure environment. So it's so far so good. It's been working really well. I guess the only thing we have to look forward to is the next time a storage area network dies and the users automatically fail over to Azure. Not that we want that to happen. We've done some testing, etc. Nobody ever wants anything like that to happen. So, and they have some goals, okay? Anywhere access to anything. They want to reduce the infrastructure, okay? Depending on the size of your organization and the age of your organization, you have 1 or 2 or 3 multiple data centers, okay? And the costs of those things are extreme, okay? And as smart as everybody is on the phone, at the end of the day, our goal is to reduce what we're spending and improve the quality of service that we're delivering to our clients, making stuff available, and protecting our organization from those boogeymen that are out there. So another example, and now I'll call that example is a brick and mortar company. An example, another client that we're in the middle of rolling out, we've been working on them for the last 90 to 120 days. Client has 40-odd locations around the country. They are they're in the healthcare industry and had some very serious needs for security, etc. We've known them for a long time. We've worked with them. We helped move them again to Office 365 a couple of years ago, and they grew from a 60 user company to today they're north of 400 employees. Not the largest company in the world, but in a couple of years, moving from 60 to 400 is impressive growth. They didn't have Active Directory up until a couple of months ago when we built it. Instead of building Active Directory on-premise and yada, 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 what we did was we literally built a proof of concept in Azure, put up an Active Directory 2012 infrastructure, utilized the same server, and did some file sharing. Okay, we then took them through BranchCache, both from a distributed and from a hosted perspective. Their typical branch, as you guys can read, ranges anywhere from 3, 5 users up to many 10, 15 at the top. So they're very small. And their headquarters has plus or minus 50 users. So we have local hosted cache capabilities in the headquarters. Now, the users can get access to the data, but all the data natively lives in Azure. All of the data that's in Azure is just delivered to the clients as standard file shares. And finally, the backup of the data that's in Azure is being done to a separate Azure data center, taking advantage of some new deliverables from their global storage offerings, etc. And today, we've increased them from a single server to basically fully redundant domain controllers, fully redundant file servers for the BranchCache. Obviously, we're doing backup. Currently are supporting site-to-site VPNs from each of the remote locations directly into Azure, and from a remote or to support remote users, we're using the standard VPN client that's available with Azure. So those are a couple of clients that are really excited and are really beginning to take advantage of the technology. In this case, each of the clients, they had anywhere from a 10 megabit to a 100 megabit Comcast, or you name the cable company, circuit out there. We ended up putting a small Cisco 880, 881 actually, in the locations to support the VPN. Okay, cost of that router was less than $1,000, including maintenance and support and all that other stuff for 3 years. So bottom line is that the client, instead of having to write big checks or build an infrastructure, we threw some routers out there, we threw some firewalls out there, we're doing some back-end monitoring to make sure for up-down, we take care of the telcos, etc., you know, the pain in the neck stuff. And we're rolling out the branches as quickly as the routers or the firewalls can get delivered, and we're doing data migration from, they were using a competitor, cloud-based competitor, and we're actually doing a very quick FTP migration of about 5 terabytes or 4.5 terabytes worth of data, and we're doing it with versioning from the third party into the Azure environment. So it's been a lot of fun, and will continue to be a lot of fun. Now, the good news is I'm going to shut up here in a minute. And for those of you clapping, that's why I asked the operator not to or to mute you guys, so you don't laugh at me. Sitting next to me is a guy by the name of Joe DiFrancesco. Joe is an Azure BranchCache engineer, works on my team, and he is prepared to go into the Azure environment, show you a little bit, and talk about the BranchCache environments that we have built. We'll come back for Q&A. We are currently at 2:30. I talked a little longer than I expected to. I'm sorry. We will look to have him spend the next 15 to 17 minutes doing what he's doing, saving approximately 10 minutes at the end for Q&A. So with that, I will turn this over to Joe, and it's all his.
All right. So in case you guys haven't seen this before, this is the Azure Management Portal, soon to be replaced by the newer modern UI themed interface that's in preview right now. So this environment we're looking at is actually my own personal environment that I use for both testing, as well as in my home environment for anything I would do on it, basically. So this is a real VPN that I have set up. It's very straightforward. It tells me which machines I have in Azure that are connected to this, as well as my address space and my bandwidth used. The VMs themselves, I have 2 in Azure right now. I essentially have one that's an extra DC. My naming convention is great. And then this one named Azure here is essentially my Azure file share that has BranchCache capabilities enabled into it. So the connection is established, and right now I'm basically going to get into those machines themselves. First I'm going to connect up to one of the local servers, the one that I have BranchCache actually installed on. And my impeccable naming conventions. This is one of my test exchange servers. All right, so the purpose of this server is the BranchCache host itself. So this is a VM that I installed BranchCache onto in my local environment because my file share in this example is in Azure. Setting it up is very straightforward. It involves setting up a few GPOs where you basically force your client machines to have the BranchCache service installed, as well as firewall rules to allow for the peer discovery. So the most important command that I'm going to show you basically is just get BC status or get BranchCache status. And this basically tells me for the machine I'm in front of what its purpose is. Current client mode, BranchCache is enabled. This is basically telling me that this is a hosted server on this box itself. It also gives me some details on what my storage capabilities are for this box, what percentage of that storage is presently allocated to use for BranchCache. My next machine I'm going to show you is one of the client machines. This is running Windows 8.1 Enterprise. The one thing that you guys have to consider is the enterprise versions of Windows must be used for BranchCache to function. The consumer versions simply don't have the service installed or capable of installing the service. Supposedly there are methods to forcibly install BranchCache if you're really, really desperate. However, that's obviously never going to be supported by anyone, most importantly Microsoft. So that's at your own risk. All right. I'm also going to open up PowerShell, and I'm basically going to run the same exact command, and that's going to look a bit different because this is not a BranchCache server. And nothing that I said, and just so you guys know, you do have the capabilities with the GPOs to manually set BranchCache servers, the hosted servers, as well as what mode your clients will be on. Now, using Server 2012 and Server 2012 R2 as long with Windows 8 clients has some very huge advantages for BranchCache. First off, with 2008 and Windows 7, you can do either or, hosted BranchCache where you have the server or distributed mode. You can't have a client enabled for both at the same time. So you have to essentially set your GPOs per site, and you have to preset what capabilities that site will have. With 2012 and Windows 8, you basically enable both. The client machine is smart enough to essentially go through the discovery process, which it's telling me my network configuration is great. BranchCache is enabled, hopefully, as it says. And then it tells me what the client mode is. And it's in hosted cache mode, and it's telling me which cache server it's connected to now. So this is telling me through AutoDiscover it found that cache server, and it's automatically connected up to it because those firewall rules have been opened up, allowing for that discovery. Now, because this is a Windows 8 client, this is just a VM, so pretend this is a laptop with a mobile user. This person, it's in hosted cache mode now, but suppose they go off-site. They take their computer somewhere else where they're on a totally different location of that hosted server. Say they're at McDonald's. They then want to connect up, pull up their local file share. So let's say they have an Azure point-to-site VPN enabled. They connect up to Azure. That Azure point-to-site address space is a member of the actual Azure site itself. So Active Directory and BranchCache is aware of that user's location once they connect up. And then I have a cache server in Azure. Let's say I want to hit a local file share. If somebody else is also connected up to the Azure VPN and there's no hosted cache that I'm connected to, it'll automatically fail over to the distributed mode and search out other Windows 8 clients that are capable of offering in distributed mode. So if somebody else is already connected to Azure like I am remotely, and let's say they've already downloaded a file that I want to pull from one of my offices, and it's all because the Azure VPNs are up and running, but instead of going a few hops through the VPN connections, it essentially discovers that that file that I want is also on another Windows 8 client connected up to Azure. So sure, it's going over the Azure VPN, so it's not going to be as quick as going over your local network, but I'm pulling it directly from that other client as opposed to going over a few hops. So this is convenient because even if you're not using that point-to-site VPN, let's say I go to a different office where that office has a direct VPN connection to Azure, but they don't have a hosted server, but somebody else on my local network on the LAN has downloaded that file as well, and it's basically going to pull it over the LAN, so I don't have to worry about any VPN connection at all from that point. But it automatically switches between the two. It gives a priority to the hosted servers, so if you're on a site that has a hosted server, you will connect up to that no matter what, and not other client machines. If the hosted server goes down for some reason, like somebody accidentally shuts off the VM or pulls a virtual or physical cord, so to say, the Windows 8 clients will fail over to distributed mode automatically. So it's very, very convenient. Now, that's for the client machines. This is all controlled by GPO. One GPO to enable the BranchCache service on the machine, the client machine, and one to open up the firewall rules. So that's very simple for that. The only other thing that you have to do to get this working is on the content server itself. And that's even easier than all of them. There's one GPO to allow for hash publication, which you just set it once and you're done. And then the last step is, because this is a Microsoft product, you'll be amazed how simple this is. All right. And this is my other VM that's in Azure, not the domain controller. You can pop it all in a domain controller if you really want in Azure, depending on your budget, essentially, but it's obviously not recommended. This is just a really basic VM in Azure. I have 4 1 terabyte virtual disks attached to it, because that's how Azure manages your storage. And then I just basically made a simple storage space. And I have a thin provisioned volume of 2 terabytes in storage where I have these 2 shares on there. They're just really, really basic. let's say this is a share you've already created, you've been using it for years. To make it branch cache capable, other than installing the actual feature, which is just going through the GUI wizard, all you have to do is go into your sharing properties and then caching, and then this will be available to click. If you don't have branch cache installed, this will be grayed out, but you just click it, and then you're good. That's all it takes. So enabling the share to be branch cache capable, setting up the hosted server, if you even go that route versus just distributed, and applying the GPOs. That's all it takes. And Jim had a great overview on exactly how it works. It's very straightforward. And it's something that it's not even just about speed and performance of getting those files to your end users quicker. It's also about saving money, because with Azure, all your inbound bandwidth, so anything you want to put up in your file shares in Azure, you aren't charged for. But anything out is metered. So anything going away from Azure, you will be billed for, even though the amount that they bill is really insignificant. It's very cost effective. Having that local branch cache server, speeding up that data transfer time, is also saving you money. So it gives you two birds with one stone, essentially. So,
great. And with that, we're going to ask them to open it up for any questions. If there's any, please feel free to ask. Joe and I are here. I know looking at file server login screens is really exciting, but the technology, et cetera, that we're talking about here is really quite impressive, and we'd love the opportunity to help you with it. Go back to the presentation, please. So, Mr. Operator, please open the next one.
Certainly. At this time, if you'd like to ask a question, please press star and 1 on your touchtone phone. You may withdraw your question at any time by pressing the pound key. Once again, to ask a question, please press star and 1 on your touchtone phone. We will take our first question from George Evans. Please go ahead.
Okay, what does this do for SharePoint, if anything?
basically, if you have a local SharePoint server, because of the fact the targets on SharePoint are hitting some sort of share, essentially where you're saving those files, you just have to enable that directory for BranchCache. And it's smart enough to know that file is cache enabled, and the hosted cache server will pick it up. The only time that it won't have any benefit whatsoever is if your SharePoint server is public facing, and then that end user is essentially hitting it from the internet. But your people who are hitting it from your local infrastructure, or they're VPN'd in, they'll hit it from the cache, or if they're on a remote office where it's a bunch of other people that have downloaded that file too, they'll pull it from the other clients.
So would this work better if the SharePoint server is on Azure?
It basically depends on where, whatever is hosting SharePoint, you want that to be where the file server is that's hosting that data for SharePoint, and then your cache servers are just in your remote locations. It could be on-premise everything, or you could put it all in Azure. It doesn't matter. It's all about optimizing the experience for the people who are not on the same site as those servers. Does that make more sense?
Yeah, that much does, but what about the stuff that's in the SQL server for SharePoint?
The actual SQL databases itself, as far as I know, they don't benefit whatsoever from BranchCache, because BranchCache isn't going into the actual SQL databases. It's the files themselves that the users are accessing.
We will take our next question from Jason King. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I actually have two questions. They're kind of related. We have a couple of branches that are running Server 2008, 2008 R2, and we were looking at doing. We've actually been discussing this as a group for a few weeks now, but we're kind of having a debate between either implementing BranchCache or using DFS as a method of just, getting. The idea is that we're keeping our data centralized here at our corporate offices, but and so for the purposes of taking backups, tape backups, archiving, things of that nature. But we want to reduce WAN traffic by having it cached there. So I guess the question is, what are the advantages? We have 2008 and I'm pretty sure we have to have 2008 Enterprise server to use BranchCache. So I guess the question is, what advantage would BranchCache give me over DFS that would be worth the increased cost? Because what we would probably do is, instead of upgrading to 2008 Enterprise, we'd probably just upgrade to 2012. But what advantage would that give me over like the DFS, which we can do right now?
So, long story short, there's a lot of pros and cons between DFS versus BranchCache. DFS is great for DR itself, where you have your users hitting a primary location and then you want to replicate it off-site in the event the local server goes down. One of the biggest negatives about DFS, other than the fact that you're essentially, if you have 5 terabytes in your data store, you're going to have at least 5 terabytes of data transferred over to the other store no matter what, to keep them in sync. Versus BranchCache, where everything is on demand. It's the second time people go to download is where you start saving. DFS, if you're replicating across multiple file shares, you do have a potential issue where somebody could lock a file, make changes to it, while somebody else accessing a different file share can lock that file at a separate time, and you could have a versioning conflict. BranchCache is versioning aware, where because of the fact they're all essentially hitting the same primary store, it's just optimizing the experience for the second time somebody downloads it in your site. You don't have those type of conflicts. So you save a lot more bandwidth with BranchCache, but then again with with DFS, you get a full DR solution where if one blows up, you can hit the other if you're using a shared DFS namespace, for example, where your end users aren't impacted. With Azure, we like going the BranchCache route if your primary data store is in Azure, simply because storage doesn't go down in Azure. So rather than replicating all of your data no matter what to multiple offices like you would with DFS, you're typically better off having that person in each site downloading that file the first time, caching it locally, then the second time somebody needs that same file, they're only pulling that amount rather than the full share. So in your case, because of the fact you're running 2008, which the server OS is fine as long as you're not running small business server. That's the only one I'm not aware of if it supports BranchCache, but standard and enterprise are okay. It's the end user OSs that you have to be careful for. Those are the ones that need the enterprise version, not the server OS. So
okay, so end user client PCs need enterprise, but not necessarily servers.
Yep.
Okay.
For Windows 7, it's got to be enterprise or ultimate. For 8 and 8.1, it's got to be enterprise. But of course, because of the fact I mentioned before that with Windows 7 in 2008, you have to pick either hosted or distributed. I'm always going to recommend going the 2012 and Windows 8 route because you get the best of both worlds.
Right.
Was that both questions? I think we got them both. I just want to make sure.
We'll take our next question from Craig Anderson. Please go ahead.
Hello there. Mine is a follow-up from the first question, and that is, if you have SharePoint and it's SharePoint Online via Office 365, is there any way to turn on BranchCache for the SharePoint Office 365 SharePoint server so that your local Office clients can take advantage of BranchCache's distributed caching, let's say, to speed up access to their SharePoint documents?
If the physical location of that file is being hosted on SharePoint Online, no. The only time it would cache is if they're being linked to essentially a local WAN share. Then it would be. Now, if you set up your own SharePoint server in, say, Azure, then you would be fine. It's just the nature of SharePoint Online being one giant shared environment where you don't have access to the physical path. everything's logical, that's basically the big reason why it doesn't work.
Too bad they don't flip that toggle switch by default.
Right?
That would be pretty nice.
Yeah, we'll put that on the list of wish to haves. It's a reasonably long list still. So sorry that we wish we could answer your question differently. We believe that there may be some additional marrying of the SharePoint Online and the Azure environment, but we haven't seen that written yet. So that's as honest as I can be with you.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Once again, to ask a question, please press star and 1 on your touch-tone phone. We will take our next question from Stephen Beckwith. Please go ahead.
How does BranchCache deal with the cached information once the user is no longer using it? Specifically, in other words, how does it purge cached files that are no longer necessary, and how does that compare to like DFS staging? You were talking before about, oh, if there's 5 terabyte over here with DFS, there's 5 over there, and the staging files actually aren't the same. You could have 5 over here and 5 over there, plus 2 in staged over here and 1 in staged over there.
Basically, it's a percentage of your available storage. For the distributed cache clients, I believe it allocates 5% of your available storage, and then once you hit that 5%, it basically just starts purging out as many older files as it needs to make room for the new cache. The hosted servers work the same exact way. It's just obviously, because the whole point of that box is to work as a cache host, you would set that percentage to a much higher amount. And it's really just until it fills, and then it starts purging out whatever's oldest first.
Got it. Thanks.
You're welcome.
And with that, I will wish you all a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.